This evidence demonstrates, and it's through eyewitness testimony that's been corroborated by others through their eyewitness statements, that 130,000 to 280,000 completed ballots for the 2020 general election were shipped from Bethpage, New York to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where those ballots and the trailer in which they were shipped disappeared.
What time of the morning was it when you saw this come in, or what time of the evening was it?
Like you said, 3-ish, 4 in that window.
In the afternoon?
No. I was there from
3 or 4 in the morning.
I was there at 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
They were in mail sleeves, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody have any earmarkings of who they were carrying these ballots? Were they carrying them? Were they on a dolly?
Yeah, they were on a dolly. Yeah, they were on a dolly. Do I know who they were? Absolutely not. But there were people that were doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lucido. Senator Santana.
Was there any particular reason you didn't ask for a supervisor to question, the ballots coming in on a dolly? Or?
Well, I didn't figure I needed to because the lead counsel that was supposed to be there was taking tally, and I was there standing right next to him. So I figured he was kind of the person that was overseeing the whole night. That's what we were told. No, we were talking directly about why are these coming in. We all thought it was interesting that these ballots were coming in so late. What was his response? We were trying to take.
Sorry.
What was his response, sir?
We were taking count, and we were his exact response I couldn't recall, but we were definitely perplexed that these were coming in so late, as well as they were being put out to be counted.
Not one of the military ballots was a registered voter. And the ballots looked like they were all exactly the same Xerox copies of the ballot. They were all for Biden across the board. There wasn't a single Trump vote, and none of the voters were registered. They had to manually enter the names and addresses and a birth date of 1/1/2020, which would override the system and allow them to enter non-registered voters, of which I saw several that day. Throughout the day, that's how they would override voters that were neither in the electronic poll book or the supplemental updated poll book.
Thank you.
I am an unaffiliated Michigan voter who was trained by the GOP to be a poll challenger on Wednesday, November 4th, beginning in the late morning until around 8 p.m. because I was told that they needed help. They were understaffed. I witnessed the room erupt in thunderous applause and derogatory cheering as Republican poll workers were picked off one by one and ejected from the room repeatedly by police escort throughout the day. By the end of the day, they had picked off so many GOP poll workers that there were probably only a few dozen left to monitor all of the processing stations in the room, which I'm told was between 130 and 160.
Thank you, Phil. During the run-up to and on Election Day, I was working as a temporary hire at United Mailing Services, UMS, a USPS subcontractor in Wisconsin. I began employment on August 26, 2020 as a route driver and box truck driver. This meant my job was to pick up mail on a predetermined route and deliver it to UMS for sorting and metering. I would then take the sorted mail in my box truck to USPS. In September or October, I began to deliver mail and ballots from UMS to USPS as part of my evening delivery duties. I knew this because there was special bins marked for ballots only. On one occasion, I forgot to retrieve the ballots for transportation and had to go back for them. After that, I always made sure to check that I had the ballot bins loaded for transport. On November 2nd, 2020, I noticed that there was only one ballot in the bin for delivery to USPS. And on November 3rd, Election Day, there were no ballots in the bin for delivery. One can imagine my surprise then when the next day, November 4th, I was asked by a senior USPS employee named Monte if I had forgotten any ballots the night before. Monte explained that an order came down from the Wisconsin-Illinois chapter of USPS that 100,000 ballots were missing. Monte then told me that his post office had dispatched employees to look for the missing ballots around 4 a.m. and that only 7 or 8 were found at UMS. Based on my previous experience and habit of double-checking for ballots, I believe that to be a lie. The following day, November 5th, 2020, I had a conversation with a different USPS employee named Rachel. in which he admitted that USPS employees were ordered to backdate ballots that were received too late to be lawfully counted. I asked Rachel if I would get in trouble with my boss for those ballots the other night, referring to the allegedly missing ballots I discussed with USPS employee Monte on November 4th, 2020. No, you wouldn't, she responded, as long as they were postmarked for the 3rd. She continued, that's why they had us do that. I didn't bring any of this to the attention of my supervisors at USPS at the time due to what I perceived to be their hostility towards President Donald Trump and their evident contempt for the law. I heard those same 2 post office employees making jokes about taking mail-in ballots for Trump and throwing them away. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Biden supporter either. In fact, I didn't vote for either of the main candidates. But something profoundly wrong occurred in Wisconsin during the presidential election, and the American people have a right to know about it. Thank you.
I was under the impression that as a poll challenger, our primary responsibility is to make sure before a vote is cast that that ballot is either in the registered poll book, the computer book, or in the paper poll book, of which anytime as a challenger I tried to look at the ballot and then try to verify it, I would get 2 or 3 of the poll workers literally screaming at me to get back 6 feet. However, we did not know that that had been overturned the night before, which would have been helpful. But at no time were we able actually to physically see the ballot and then see it in the poll electronic book. The person opening the ballot would probably be sitting where Senator Theis is, and the electronic screen that we were supposed to be watching is basically to where the committee clerk is. Now, I don't know if you guys got binocular vision, but I don't. So I cannot look at a ballot over here, run down to this screen and be able to see it and verify that it is the same. I did address that with them multiple times, and they told me, sorry, I should have planned better. Plan better as to how? Needing binoculars? I mean, we as a poll challenger are supposed to verify the name, address on the ballot to the electronic poll book. And if it is not there, then it is supposed to be in a paper poll book, of which there was a significantly large poll worker. Anytime that I said that is not in the book, when she would scan it, it would not come up on the screen, then she would basically hover over this paper book, sometimes checking something, and other times we could see that they did not check it. And then they proceeded to manually enter these into the electronic poll book, where then they would come up on the screen. Many of these papers were not absentee ballot, the yellow envelope, the standard ballot. Some of them were on printed paper. Some of them were in white envelopes. Some of them had multiple papers attached to them, so then they would manually enter them into the electronic book.
Next, we have this name that I'm doing very poorly with, Hema. Oh, Hema, welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. After her will be Melissa Carone and James Danley. Hema, welcome to the Senate Oversight Committee. Can you tell me how to say your last name correctly?
Kolanagi Reddy.
So now everybody else can know.
The moment I saw you holding on to that card, I'm like, that's me. That's got to be me.
Well, you have 3 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. This is my first time doing this as a poll challenger at TCF. As an immigrant to this country, as you can tell, we had great respect for America, the elections here. We always thought it has a lot of integrity, whereas the countries we come from, a lot of things happen. But all of that changed the day I went there. Like I was at TCF on both the days 3rd and the 4th. 3rd was pretty much the same monotonous stuff going on, nothing much to note, other than occasional ballot challenging. But the next day is where I noticed a lot of issues. There was a group of people who were like agitators who were trying to get GOP people in trouble. And from my skin color, everybody assumes that I'm a Democrat. And so they just kind of come to me, and one of the ladies was thinking that let's get these MFs out. And I'm like, MF's who? Like, because she thought I was a Democrat. Then when I pulled out my tag, she looked at me and she's like, you're on the wrong side. I'm like, how can you say I'm on the wrong side? I pick whoever I want, right? Because this is a free country. But then I noticed that they were going and getting all the white male Republicans out by, just kind of sheer intimidation, just saying, oh, your mask flipped, you're going to get people killed, like you heard from so many other people. And then what I did was I got trained by both the MIGOP and Election Integrity Fund. So I went to Tim Griffin of Election Integrity Fund and I said, can I have my nonpartisan credentials? And then when I got that badge on, everything changed. Like people just looked at me differently. I was looked at with a lot of hostility when I had the GOP tag. And now that I have a nonpartisan tag, I was respected at the counting boards. I was respected by the Democrats and the ACLU. And in fact, I was able to even help some of the GOP people from being escorted out by putting myself there and asking why they were even being escorted out and arguing with these people. But the whole environment was so hostile and condescending. And a lot of people have talked about the ballots that were not in the poll book or the system. And I was at a table which had a full stack of this file which said not in EPB/S, which is poll book or system. They were scanning and manually entering them, and the signatures on those sleeves were exactly alike, like a bar graph. And then they were sequential ballot numbers. They started from 2232, and sequence was something that threw me off. I'm like, how does that happen? And most of those people were from the guarded street, and they were being entered manually. So those were the observations that I had. I had all the details, the last names and everything. I gave the affidavit to the Election Integrity Fund. The thing that bothered me was that when every time a GOP challenger was being escorted out, all the poll workers, Democrats, and everybody else were cheering. And that was very disappointing because these people were just doing their job. They were not attacking. They were not there with guns. They were just volunteering their time, and they were treated with utmost disrespect.
Thank you for your time, your testimony. Could you briefly go back to just a few seconds ago? You mentioned how you saw some ballots that were sequential, and then you described them somehow, and I missed the phrase that you used. Where they came from, I think you mentioned?
Yeah, it was from Goddard Street in Wayne County.
Goddard Street, okay.
Yeah, and they all had sequential ballot numbers, and they were being manually fed into the system.
Okay, thank you. Any other members have a question? Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.